Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this.
Hey there, Bill Baren here with
Karen Kenney, BB and KK in the house, here to have one of our little chats, our little get-togethers to just see what's riffing off the top of our head, some things that we've been thinking about. And I always love to see what my friend, East Coast, West Coast, I'm always interested to see what my friend Bill has to say about things that have been on my mind. And I'm always curious to hear about what's on his mind, because he's a wicked smarty pants, you guys.
You know, it's really funny. I was like, all right, look, what are we doing? I mean, it's like, is this enlightenment in the gutter? Is that what we're doing here?
You know, I just think that, you know, the famous writer Joan Didion said, you know, I don't know what I think until I write. I don't know what I think until I write it down. And it's a discovery process. And I think sometimes when I talk to you, I think I know what I think until I start to talk. And then I hear another point of view, and it's just kind of like this. It's like, you know, it's like, call it spiritual ping pong. It's like we just kind of get to go back and forth. And so these talks help me to sometimes figure out what I believe, what I think, and also what I didn't know that I thought.
Yeah. You know, I'll start with a little bit of gratitude, and I'll tell you why I love these talks, and, you know, and I hope that we continue to record them and publish them. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like we're all multifaceted, faceted humans.
Yes.
Having a spiritual experience, right?
Yeah.
And in the multifacetedness of who I am, to be able to be met in so many facets of who I am in a conversation is extremely gratifying. And so that's the reason why I love it, because I know that it doesn't matter where the conversation goes, that we can meet each other in all those places. And so whether it is enlightenment or whether it is a gutter conversation, we can be there.
Yeah, because I think I think the one great thing about you and I is that we always meet each other with curiosity and not judgment.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it fun and interesting. And it's like, I wonder what my friend, and there are times that things happen and I think, you know, it's interesting is my clients will say to me, so, you know, back in the day, you may or may not remember this, but there were all these like bands that people would wear on their wrists and it said WWJD, what would Jesus do? But now my clients always say to me, I'm always like, what would KK do here? What would KK say? And I always start laughing. I'm like, don't ask me, ask your inner teacher. But there are times, I'm not going to lie, when I'll see something online or I'll see something in the coaching world or business or whatever, or like whatever, a poker thing, like just whatever. And I'll always be like, I wonder what my buddy BB, I wonder what Bill Baren would think about this. So these are the opportunities where I get to be with somebody who not only that I respect and admire, but that I really genuinely like and love. And so it's really wonderful to be, you know, that quote by Rumi where he says basically, there's a field, I'm paraphrasing, there's a field beyond suffering, beyond judgment, beyond whatever. I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of feel like what we're doing is we're meeting in the field.
Yeah. That's actually one of my favorite poems and one of my favorite lines like ever written.
Well, see, and I didn't even know that. So spiritual team on the job.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about this, because I remember, so last year, wait, was it this year? Last year. So for those of you who may not know this, Bill Baren was my business mentor and coach for 2 years. Learned so much from him. And this time last year in January, I was having an existential, call it dark night of the soul. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a crisis, but it was definitely an awakening of something was happening. And I caught that awful flu of 2019 that was going around. And I almost, knock on wood, I have a really healthy immune system. So I almost never get sick. Like all my issues are in my gut. It's never usually like sniffles, colds, flus, but I got knocked on my ass. So when I get sick, it has to be like a super bug usually that like takes me out. And my sweetie was just kind of trying, he gets everything. So he was just kind of trying to nicely, like he would bring me tissues and stuff, but he was trying to stay away from me. So I would literally be in our bedroom in the dark, feeling like shit, like my body was just like shit, and trying to like, you know, you try to use all your spiritual tools. I am not a body. I am free. I am as God created me, all the Course in Miracles stuff, try to remind yourself. But there was moments of, and I told you this on a coaching call we had one day, where I was like having moments of like terror, where it was almost like I was forgetting myself, or I didn't know who I was. And there was like this falling away, or like if I was literally the graphic is like a snake shedding its skin, and it's like, what am I leaving behind? And there were moments where it was really, really scary, and I felt incredibly alone in the dark, lying there. And I just kept saying, like, you can't run from this. Whatever this is, you just have to stay in the discomfort. Like you just have to sit in the shitty diaper right now, like, and just be in it, because there's something here for you. And I remember talking to you on the call about it, and you were just kind of like, you know, smiling compassionately at me, just kind of like, oh, another, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was some version of like, and I'm sure I do because I wrote everything down, but it like another layer of the ego kind of sloughing off, and like I just felt so raw and vulnerable. And then interestingly enough, about a month, maybe 3 weeks to a month ago, and you can correct me, you did a post and like on social media, and it was just you staring right into the camera, like unflinchingly. And you looked, I'm not to be mean, you looked a little tired. You looked a little overwhelmed. There was like a look in your eye of like, just like, I don't know. And I'm not going to speak for you. I want to hear about it. But you did a post about how there's some changes happening here, and you felt, I think you were feeling those things, tired, like questioning all this stuff. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because here we are again, the end of January 2020, and I'm going through another whole cycle, and I'm working with this amazing healer, Marianne, not Marianne Williamson, a healer named Marianne, who is in Portugal. And she has this incredible ability, and just I always say to people, suspend disbelief, where she can like go into your body from long distance and look in the tissue and see what's there. And kind of, so I talk about it like kind of all this sediment from the bottom of the pond is kind of being stirred up right now. This old trauma, old stuff that maybe is unresolved. But I feel like another layer. January seems to be the month. So I just wanted to kind of talk to you about what was going on for you, because I think that some people, as a spiritual mentor, some people sometimes say to me, well, you're there right now. Like there comes a point where like you're there. And I'm always like, hey, unless you're Jesus Christ or the enlightened Buddha himself, we all still have work to do. I am a lifelong learner. This is a deepening process. And so can you talk a little bit about what this has been like for you? Because I'm like, it's not like, oh, I've arrived. Like I'm continually kind of going through this metamorphosis.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I'm sort of present to is, and I'll talk about a framework that I'm present to, and then I'll speak to like what was actually happening, what is happening. So whenever we land somewhere new, we're a complete beginner. And we don't know anything. It feels like we're lost. It just feels super uncomfortable. Yeah. It's like completely discombobulating. And it feels like I don't belong here.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
Double amen hands.
And then we go through whatever processes that we go through. Some people are much faster than others. And then we begin to feel like, oh, I've got my footing. Like, I know, I understand what's happening. Like, time slows down a little bit and we're able to see things. And then we get to a place where it's like, ooh, like a mastery of this new place. Where it just feels like, whoa, like I can do this with my eyes closed. Like whatever this is. Mm-hmm. And then that thing begins to die, right? And then the next phase is like, I'm holding on for dear life. And yes. Can I go back to that previous phase where I'm like, I had it together, where it felt like this is really great. And then we're like holding on, we're holding on, we're holding on. And then finally we let go and we wind up in a new place. And now we're lost. We're completely a beginner. And the entire cycle keeps happening over and over and over again.
Yes.
So what was happening for me around Christmas was like that post and that picture was the day that I let go, and I am not hanging on. I'm landing in this new place that I have no idea what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. Like I'm a complete beginner here.
Yeah.
And it was like almost the relief of like letting go of like the clenched fist of like the previous incarnation.
Yes.
And then the complete bewilderment and the pain and discombobulation of being in a new place.
That is a perfect description for how your face looked, was a little bewildered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people commented on that picture, like supporting you and loving you and saying they're so proud of you for your vulnerability, for your transparency, for letting us see. Because for those of you who may not know my friend, you are very well known as being a wicked successful guy. Smart, has his shit together, knows what he's doing. He's a leader in the industry. He's the business oracle, like all these things. And it's so easy to forget that there's just, please say, there's like just a guy in there. There's just like a person who's trying to figure this shit out too, you know? And it was a really beautiful moment, you know, to witness. And it's so funny because I have this little, I don't know if you would call it it's not a meme, but it's like this little cartoon drawing of a stick figure of a little girl. She has like no hair. She has like 3 strands of sticking up hair. She's wearing a little red dress. It's very crudely drawn. Her arms are like wide out and she's smiling. And what she's exclamating is, I have no idea what's going to happen. And she's so excited. And I always send it to my clients when they're in the hallway, as I call it, in that place of bewilderment, like what fucking direction I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and I just think like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could embrace it with that enthusiasm? But man, it's a little discombobulating in the beginning, like getting your footing. And it's like, well, who, like, that's the big question, right? That all the, like, Ramana Maharshi always said, the greatest spiritual question you ask is, who am I? So like, who am I without, as you called it, the mastery, the knowledge, like, who am I as this, like, who am I? Like when you get, you know, like different things, like if you've always been really attached to your hair and then God forbid you get cancer and you lose your hair, as we age and we lose our quote unquote looks and you lose your mind, like all these things that we self-identify as, like, so that in those moments, I just remember laying there thinking like, wow, like, I don't know jack shit right now. Like I am in total, like the void, right? Dark night of the soul, existential crisis, whatever it is. Oh.
You know, so much of how we perceive ourselves
yes
is through the eyes of other people's perceptions.
Amen.
And part of sort of this next phase for me is, how can I cut that out? And the interesting thing, yes, I did get a lot of vulnerable posts, like support, kudos, all of that, and worry as well, right? And it was,
I'm so glad you brought that up, because a little flash in my mind, I swear I'm not just saying it because you just brought it up, a little flash in my mind was, I wonder if anybody was like, oh shit, BB's about to have a breakdown. Like, what's going? If anybody thought that.
I am sure lots of people thought that, right? And here was the interesting thing was, I didn't set out to write a post to share on social media. I set out to process in my journal, and I did. And then I had a thought, I should really share this, because I have some really cool stuff that I write, but I never share it. I'm going to share it. I should really take a picture, which I don't usually do.
True.
Myself. I think that was might have been my first solo selfie in my life.
Yeah.
Right. So I put it in and I just posted. So there's a lot of people that talk about vulnerability, but to me, it's a two-phase process. Can I be vulnerable with myself? And if the answer is yes, the rest is just a freaking finger saying post. Right. And so I wrote it for me.
Yes.
And I posted it because I was curious. I was like, whoa, what would happen? Right. Like, it wasn't from a need to share with the world.
Mm-hmm.
I had a need to share with myself. Mm-hmm. And I had a desire to post it to see what would happen.
Experiment.
Yeah, that's all it was.
I mean, you haven't been as successful in stuff as you are and well known as you are. You were not a brand or a person or a business that grew through, not obviously like, yeah, that's how I found you was online, but personally, you even said when you first came back kind of to social media, however long ago it was, you said, I'm not even really sure like what I'm doing here and what this means to me, this whole experiment of social media stuff, but I'm going to give it a go. And so you really, to me, have just kind of started really posting again pretty recently. So I'm so fascinated I'm always fascinated by what motivates people. So I'm really happy that you just shared that. I'm always fascinated by people's reactions to like, or the people's need. And I was so like, people's need to be like, I'm about to be vulnerable now. Like, we have to announce it. Like, something is about to happen. So I just thought it was so fascinating when you posted it. And I just kind of, I sent you a private message, and then I just sat back and watched. And I was like, cause I'm into that too. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting watching how everybody's responding to this. And I think so much of what you said is true. I mean, like, how people respond is so secondary. The first thing I say, so when I'm on a call with my mentoring clients, I always do a little, call it a centering, call it a prayer, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things I always say is, may we be able to like listen with open ears, open hearts, and open minds, compassionate, open ears, open hearts, and minds, so we can actually hear. But may we have the courage to be honest first and foremost with ourselves, and then with each other. And that's how I always lead it, because I think that's the place where it gets squirrely. And because if you can't be honest with yourself, and I think that's what those moments of dark nights of the soul, or the existential crisis, or the unknown, is you're sitting there and you're having a very, like, what I call fearless look in the soul mirror. And you're like, who am I really? And I think about that all the time. I've been kind of playing with the idea, like I said to my sweetie, I'm not going to coach forever. There's going to come a point where it, like, whatever I know I'm transitioning. I already know, I don't know what that looks like. And I'm just kind of going for the ride right now. But I sometimes play with the idea of, wouldn't be, if I could make just as much money working in a bookstore, I would do that. If I could make as much money, maybe having like an animal kind of sanctuary, I would do that. Maybe a younger version of myself had, like, who am I, as you were talking, like in the eyes of people who know me? And so much of that is becoming, not that I don't love people, but I'm less and less interested in like the public response to me versus what feels like really, really genuine and true and authentic, you know, to me. That's all that really I care about more and more. Not in terms of people, but with myself. Like, the assignment is alignment, I always say. And am I in alignment with, you know, like this is my podcast, my personal podcast that's coming out. It came out this morning. It says, how's your character? And it's talking all about is who we say we are, who we believe we are, actually in alignment with how we are and how we're showing up.
Yeah. And we experience pain when what we perceive ourselves to be and who we're actually being gets illuminated. It's like other people's words cannot hurt us unless they're illuminating the gap between who we believe ourselves to be and who we really are.
Right. Or it's not even, it's I'm saying the same thing, just a little differently, is that, or they're illuminating the place where we already know we're full of shit.
Yeah.
And I think and that's what I say, because if you're what you think and what you say and what you do, and I think Gandhi was one of the first people to say it. It's just, I say it a little, same thing. I always say samesies different. Is that if who we say we are, who we believe we are, who we then say we are, but then how we are is not congruent, there will be suffering. And it won't just be you who suffers. It will be sometimes, especially if you're a coach who's made promises about, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I will do for you, this is what I can do, but then you're full of shit and people have paid you a lot of money. I understand that we're all responsible for our own choices, actions, feelings, and stuff. But if you've made a promise, a guarantee that you actually can't fulfill because you're not the person you say you are, or you don't have the skill set you say you possess, you're not the only one who will suffer from your lack of alignment. It will affect other people.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And one of the things that I think about for myself, it's like, all right, okay, can I just be honest with myself as the first step, right? The second step is, can I accept that part of me as being so in this particular moment? And then can I share that part with people unapologetically, right? And then there's the next level of acceptance and loving, right? So it's like, that's actually one of the reasons why we are, as humans, we are a tribal species. So it is really important for us to be able to be seen in all those places. But the reality is, the way that most of us live our life is that not only do we not accept it in ourselves, not only do we not, I don't even know how to say it, like there's a place where we're okay with something within ourselves. But then that leap to being able to be okay with sharing it, it's a pretty big leap. But that's freedom.
100, yes.
Right? And like when we feel not so free, it's usually because we're hiding, right? The first step is not hiding from yourself. The second step is not hiding from others.
Yeah. Yes. And I ding, 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 give them a prize. Because I think what is so fascinating, 2 points, like when you said we're a tribal people, we're a tribal culture. So in 7th grade, I had that's when we used to have home ec. So my home ec teacher I was in sewing. So I did cooking and sewing one semester, sewing the other. And I always had a lead foot in sewing. So I was always like, like I always like drove this machine too fast. And we were all chatty because hormones and boys and girls together and all this stuff. And the way that she would threaten punishment to us is she would say, don't make me send you to Siberia. And she would threaten to cast us out of the group. And I've never forgotten that. And it's exactly what you're thinking about. So when you talk about, okay, we hit that place where we can maybe accept like, oh yeah, I did that thing, or I'm whatever the thing we're working with and we're trying to accept about ourselves, we can get to a place of maybe inner peace with ourselves, but then having to admit it. So like in the 12 steps, like when you 12 steps of anything where you say, make a fearless moral inventory. Okay, did that. Now make amends. It's like, fuck, like that's what can be really hard for people because, and it goes back to when we first started working together, well, the whole group and the big shift, when we first started working together, the first, you may not remember this because there's so much content, but I remember the first audios that we listened to were these 3 fear things. And it's like, the reason why we don't want to then share it, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, that we're not going to be loved. But it's exactly what you said, getting to the other side of it and realizing that you're okay with it no matter what they do. I'm making peace with myself. That is the ultimate freedom. That is the experience.
You know, when there's this terminology in relationships, right? Like this person is not available.
Yes.
Right? All that means is that person doesn't want to share parts of themselves that they're afraid they're going to be rejected.
Yeah.
Or unloved.
Yeah.
That's really all it is, right?
Well, because we were taught, I mean, it's the conditioning. Just go all the way back to when we were kids, and it's be a good boy, be a good girl, get good, whatever whatever people's particular household arrangement, or, you might not have been your parents, but your culture, your society, the kids at school, your siblings, whatever, your guardians, whoever it was, is as long as you're behaving in a way that I like, then you get the cookie, the treat, the money, the love, whatever the reward is, right? And almost never are we told. And I always say to kids who had parents, like when I meet people who are like, I had a really happy childhood. It was beautiful. My parents loved me. They support. I'm like, you're like a fucking unicorn, man. I have a unicorn sweater on right now. I'm like, you're like a unicorn. Because most of us, I think there was always this underlying threat of, if you're not this, then this consequence. So I think it takes a lot of courage after all the years of being conditioned to say, I'm not playing that game that way anymore. Transparency is a muscle, I think, a skill like that we build.
Yeah. Can I choose to do what I want to do in a world when there's no consequences? Yeah.
Or no reward for just being me.
Well, it's the same thing, right? Like,
right? Yeah.
Reward is just a positive consequence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
it's so interesting. It's like you were talking about, if you could make just as much money, you would be doing this, right? I don't know. Would you? Right? Like in a world where every need of yours would be absolutely and utterly met, mm-hmm. What would you choose to do tomorrow?
So when you say, I'm very specific, I'm very literal kind of sometimes in specific person, but so if it was like, I have plenty of money, I can do whatever I want to do, like something like that, like I don't have
plenty of money, you have plenty of health, you had plenty of love, you had plenty of everything, what would you do tomorrow?
I mean, I would definitely be writing, no doubt. I mean, I'm a communicator, so I would still be finding ways to communicate. But I guess it's like in that scenario, I just know I'd still be helping somebody somewhere doing something. But it just might look a little different, I think. I think that, I do this exercise sometimes with my clients where I say, can we just suspend like reality for a moment? And I want you to describe to me your perfect day. Like everything. What time would you wake up? Would you exercise? Like, what would you make love? Would you make music? Like, what would you eat? Like, what would a perfect day? Like, exactly those perfect conditions. And what I find so fascinating is they'll start and then they'll go, but no, that's not possible. And I'm like, no, we're suspending reality. And I think it can be really hard for us to imagine. Remember when I said to you, like, when I like joined your program and like we get the marketing book this big and there's all these things. And I just kept saying to you, I just want you to tell me that I can just make money by being myself. Like, that's all I ever wanted. Like, can I just be myself in this world and know that I can make a difference and have, enough money in the bank and all these things? Because I just, the thought of conforming and trying to Cirque du Soleil myself into some version that makes it all work by the rules just fucking is not interesting to me.
Yeah, and I also find it fascinating, like, those questions of like what would happen, right? Like, not like I asked these questions a lot. It just came to me, and I thought, well, I can imagine lots of people coming up with that perfect day, and it just feels so good.
Yeah.
But would it feel good on day 32 of the same thing?
Well, I think it depends on what that looked like for you. Like for me, I know it involved there's definitely some time on a beach. I know there's some writing. I know that there's so like I can go down the line, right? It's probably some yummy vegan snacks, some time with my dogs, like whatever the thing is. And I ask myself that all the time because I feel right now this pull to move somewhere warm again. I'm like, I'm like New Hampshire, your days are numbered. That's what I keep saying. And I've always kind of I'm getting so much more clear with myself around like what's fantasy. Like, yeah, like I've always wanted a little cottage on the beach, close to the beach. Nothing like it doesn't, and it's not that I wouldn't enjoy fancy and big. It's just, that's not never been the vision. Like, I'm just like, I want a safe place with this space for my sweetie to have a studio, me to have a writing space. It's sunny, it's bright, it's warm, close to the ocean. And then I'm like, I don't know, would I still be, when I lived in San Diego, I lived in an apartment right on like the water. And like by day 45, I was like, how many days can I lay on the beach? Like, how many days can I do this? Where do I feel most? Because I feel like we'll suffer if we don't feel purposeful or useful.
And that's the thing. It's like I think there was this quote or this interview with Jim Carrey when he said some version of like the thing that I really love about getting rich is the fact that I now know it has no meaning.
Right.
Right. So it's almost the same thing. It's like, yes, you might not, like a day 45 laying on the beach, you might be like, well, that's not enough. But you got to get yourself to the point where you had those 45 days. And only from that place can you go, okay, there's something more. But that's the thing. We don't often give ourselves what we truly, truly want in that moment so that we never know what's next.
Well, yeah, and you don't have the opportunity. I'm just continuing the thought. You don't have the opportunity to realize the thing that you want isn't actually what you wanted. Because I always say, I know so many rich and successful, unhappy people. And I've had people say to me, like, when all your dreams come true, like, then what? Like, now what? And so I'm always fascinated by, so if it's not the cottage on the beach yet or whatever, can I be just as happy with what is? And that's kind of my thing. Well, how do I make every day my ideal day, even if it's in like, you know, I'm like, it doesn't do me any good to bitch and moan that I'm in cold New Hampshire all winter long. So I think it's like, not like giving up on the dream or whatever the thing is, but I don't want to live in a way where I don't have like immense gratitude for how things are. To roll back to the very beginning of this, because I think all of it is a deepening and a discovery process around what really matters in these transitions that we go through, because my youngest self would have wanted something different, and my 35-year-old self would want something than my 45-year-old self, than my 51-year-old self. So I think this continual process of allowing ourselves to, first of all, like what you said, get really honest and want what we want, and then be willing to allow an internal pivot to happen or an external pivot to happen when we go, oh, I got it, now what? Like, it's still not the thing.
Yeah. And also, even if it's an egoic want, right? Like, because there's some rich information there when we get what we want, right? And sometimes, like, I found myself last week going, like, the thing that I've been saying that I want is being handed to me, and I'm like trying to throw it away. What is that all about?
Do you have any clues as to what you think it's all about?
No, I have no clue. I mean, like, look, at the end of the day, it really is about love, right?
Yes, of course.
And, you know, but other than that, it's all, you know, like one big acid trip, really.
It is like, and I think that's why, you know, the beautiful thing, one of the things I love about what A Course in Miracles says is basically, look, we're not telling you to deny the body and to deny your feelings. Just don't make it such a big deal. Don't make it too real. And it's a way of saying, if you are the light of the world, like, lighten up a little bit. And somebody once said to me, for Course in Miracles students, you might get this. For those of you who don't know, just like stay with me for the story. It says, whenever something is unfolding in your life, just imagine that it's happening on a big stage in front of you, like a live play that is being enacted, and all the actors are playing their roles and doing the things you've assigned to them, and you're in the audience, and on one side is Jesus, on one side is Holy Spirit. And I always think about it like this. At some point I lean over and I go, is this a comedy or a tragedy? And then I'm like, I think it's a comedy.
As you asked that question, I thought Jesus looks at you and goes, yes.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so and I think part of it too, so much of it for me, and it's why when I talk about my big three, like one of my big three, like, you know, and there could be more than three, but one of my big threes has always been humor, and like just not taking myself in all of this acid trip, as you put it, like so seriously, because it's just like, what, I can't tell you how many times a day I talk to myself all the time, and I just go, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, I often just feel like, I don't know, I'm just running with it.
Yeah.
So
it seems like I don't know what the hell is happening right now is the perfect way for us to end this episode.
I second, I knock my gavel, I second that.
And here's to continuing not knowing what is happening, but loving every step of the journey.
Amen. That's all. Amen, brother.
Ciao for now.
See ya. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.